The Mandalorian Code does not present itself as moral philosophy, and that is precisely why it survives where other ethical systems collapse. In The Mandalorian, honor is not framed as purity of heart or clarity of belief, but as consistency of action. Din Djarin is never asked to prove that he is good. He is only asked to keep his word. Promises matter more than motives, because motives are invisible and unreliable, while follow-through can be measured. This grounding of honor, in behavior rather than intention, keeps the code functional in a galaxy where certainty is rare and survival is never abstract. Din does not narrate his morality. He performs it. When he accepts a contract, he completes it. When he gives his word, he honors it, even when circumstances change. This does not make him righteous. It makes him predictable. And predictability, in a fractured galaxy, is a form of trust. The code understands something the Jedi never fully did. Moral systems collapse when they require emotional purity. They endure when they demand accountability. The Creed's rules are often misread as religious dogma, but they function more like psychological armor. For Din, foundlings, helmets, and secrecy are not sacred in themselves. They are survival mechanisms forged in the aftermath of near genocide. Mandalorians lost their worlds, their clans, and their institutions. The code emerged not to define virtue, but to preserve identity when everything else was taken. Rules exist not to elevate Mandalorians above others, but to keep them from disappearing entirely. This is why the helmet rule matters so deeply to Din. It is not about superiority or exclusion, it is about continuity. When a people are scattered and hunted, visibility becomes vulnerability. Anonymity becomes cohesion. The helmet turns the individual into a living archive of a culture that no longer has temples or capitals. The Creed protects memory, not morality. It answers the question of who we are when the galaxy refuses to remember us. Unlike Jedi doctrine, Mandalorian ethics do not demand universal kindness. Mercy is optional. Loyalty is not. Din will spare an enemy if it serves context, honor a contract, or protect his people. He will execute without hesitation if circumstances demand it. This is not hypocrisy. It is situational ethics rooted in responsibility rather than abstraction. The code does not pretend violence is avoidable. It demands that violence be purposeful. This distinction is crucial. Violence is treated as labor, not identity. Din fights because the galaxy requires it, not because it defines him. There is no romance in his battles, no language of destiny or righteousness. Blasters are tools. Armor is equipment. Conflict is a condition to be managed. By stripping violence of myth, the code prevents it from becoming moral theatre. Honor remains grounded because it never pretends bloodshed is noble. What truly separates Mandalorian ethics from Jedi dogma is decentralization. There is no Mandalorian pope, no single authority that dictates correct interpretation. Different covenants hold different versions of the creed, and the code allows for that plurality. Honor is situational, shaped by context, history, and survival needs. This flexibility prevents dogma from calcifying into hypocrisy. The Jedi collapsed under the weight of their own absolutism. Mandalorian culture bends instead of breaking. Din's encounters with other Mandalorians expose this design intentionally. Some remove their helmets freely. Some cling to tradition fiercely. None are framed as inherently false. The code does not require consensus to function. It requires commitment. This tolerance for internal contradiction is not weakness. It is resilience. A moral system that admits disagreement can survive exile, defeat, and fragmentation. At the center of all of this stands Din Djarin, a man who never seeks to be a symbol, and becomes one anyway. Din does not debate ethics, he lives them. When rules conflict, he chooses the one that protects responsibility over reputation. When ideology clashes with care, he breaks doctrine rather than abandon kin. This is where the Mandalorian Code reveals its true hierarchy, and it is not what outsiders expect. Family is not a secondary value in Mandalorian culture. It is the highest law. Found family outranks blood, lineage, and tradition. A foundling is not a charity case. They are proof that belonging is chosen, not inherited. When Din chooses Grogu, he is not betraying the creed. He is obeying its deepest truth. Protection is the purpose to which all other rules bend. Grogu does not weaken the code, he exposes what it was always meant to protect. Contracts become secondary, credits lose meaning, survival shifts from individual persistence to custodial responsibility. The creed does not shatter under this pressure, it adapts. Honor that cannot adapt becomes cruelty. Mandalorian ethics survive precisely because they allow evolution without erasure. This is why the helmet rule becomes such a powerful point of tension rather than contradiction. When Din removes his helmet, it is not framed as apostasy. It is framed as prioritization. Identity serves family, not the other way around. A rule that endangers kin loses legitimacy. The code does not punish Din for this choice because the code was never about the rule itself. It was about what the rule protects. Leadership within Mandalorian culture follows the same logic. The dark saber does not crown kings, it burdens caretakers. Authority is not destiny, it is obligation. The blade chooses those who do not want it, because ambition disqualifies. Din resists leadership not out of cowardice, but out of clarity. He understands that power without readiness is just another form of failure. The code respects that restraint. This is why Mandalorian morality endures in a galaxy obsessed with absolutes. It never pretends its adherents are saints. It accepts contradiction, violence, doubt, and compromise, and still demands care for one's own. It does not promise purity. It promises continuity. In a universe where institutions collapse under moral rigidity, the Mandalorian code survives by embracing the grey rather than denying it. What remains to be explored is how this ethical framework reshapes leadership, destiny, and legacy across Mandalorian history, and why a culture built on conditional rules outlasts empires built on absolute truths. When family becomes the highest law, everything else in the Mandalorian code is revealed as conditional, and that conditionality is its greatest strength rather than its weakness. Din Djarin's story is not about abandoning tradition, but about discovering what tradition is actually for. Rules exist to protect people, not the reverse. The moment a rule threatens the safety of kin, its authority collapses. That hierarchy is never spoken aloud, but it governs every meaningful decision Din makes once Grogu enters his life. The presence of Grogu forces the creed inward. Before, honor was largely external, contracts fulfilled, bounties completed, obligations met. With Grogu, honor becomes custodial. Protection replaces transaction. Din's violence narrows rather than expands. He fights less for profit and more for preservation. This is not a softening of the code. It is a clarification of its purpose. A culture forged in survival cannot afford to forget why it survives in the first place. This is why Grogu is not a contradiction to Mandalorian identity, but its mirror. A foundling does not dilute culture. They prove it. Mandalorian belonging has never been about blood purity or lineage. It has always been about choice reinforced by care. When Din chooses Grogu, he is reenacting the very process that saved him as a child. The code turns inward and reveals its deepest logic. Survival is meaningless without continuity. The helmet rule, often misunderstood as rigid extremism, becomes the most revealing stress test of Mandalorian ethics. When Din removes his helmet, the act is not framed as rebellion but as triage. Identity yields to responsibility. The self yields to kin. In that moment, honor does not vanish. It becomes visible. A rule that cannot be broken to save a child was never honorable to begin with. What makes this moment powerful is that the code does not retaliate with moral absolutism. There is no divine punishment, no cultural excommunication framed as cosmic judgment. Consequences exist, but they are procedural rather than moral. Din is not condemned as corrupt. He is simply out of alignment with one interpretation of the creed. That distinction matters. It preserves dignity even in disagreement. The culture survives because it allows fracture without annihilation. Leadership follows the same logic. The dark saber is not a symbol of destiny. It is a weight. It confers responsibility without permission to desire it. Mandalorian leadership is reluctant by design because ambition corrodes stewardship. Those who want power most are least suited to wield it. Din's resistance to the blade is not failure. It is qualification. He understands that authority without readiness only multiplies harm. This is where Mandalorian ethics quietly dismantle the myth of the chosen ruler. There is no prophecy that crowns kings. There is only obligation that finds those who will carry it unwillingly. The code respects caretakers more than conquerors. It honors those who hesitate, because hesitation implies awareness of consequence. In a galaxy obsessed with destiny, this reluctance becomes a radical form of moral intelligence. Din's journey proves that honor does not require moral clarity, only moral commitment. He does not resolve every contradiction. He carries them. Violence remains a tool he uses reluctantly but competently. Mercy remains contextual rather than absolute. Doubt remains present rather than eliminated. The code does not demand purity, it demands persistence. This acceptance of ambiguity keeps Mandalorian ethics alive where cleaner philosophies shatter under pressure. What ultimately separates Mandalorian morality from Jedi dogma is honesty about harm. The Jedi attempted to eliminate darkness through denial and suppression. The Mandalorians acknowledge it, plan for it, and live with it. They do not claim violence ennobles them. They claim responsibility limits its damage. That humility prevents moral grandstanding and keeps honor grounded in lived consequence. Din Djarin never becomes a hero in the mythic sense. He becomes something rarer and more durable, a custodian of continuity. His choices ripple outward not because they are righteous, but because they are consistent. People trust him not because he claims virtue, but because he does what he says he will do. In a broken galaxy, that reliability becomes revolutionary. By the end of his arc, Din embodies the quiet truth at the heart of the Mandalorian code. Honor is not about who you are when watched. It is about who you protect when it costs you identity, status, and certainty. Family is not a reward for obedience. It is the reason obedience exists at all. And morality does not survive by pretending the world is clean. It survives by accepting that it is not. The Mandalorian code endures because it never lies about what it asks of its people. It asks for blood, loss, compromise, and doubt. It offers no absolution, only belonging. In a galaxy addicted to extremes, that honesty is what keeps it alive. The Jedi sought purity and collapsed. The Sith sought domination and consumed themselves. The Mandalorians survive because they accept the grey and keep moving anyway. And that is the final lesson Din Djarin teaches without ever articulating it. You do not need to be good to be honourable. You need to be responsible. You need to choose who you protect. And you need to accept that sometimes the most ethical choice is the one that cost you the most. Thanks for watching. If you like my content, be sure to check out my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub Art. I will be posting art that I have made like scratch art and posting on there. Also be sure to follow my Facebook page and the TikTok. I am thankful for all the support that everyone has given me the past year and look forward to the success that we will have in the future.